I don't know if you were present when one of the public bill, Newport, talked about
the Weiss Miller application?
No, dealing with food waste or clean lumber and building material disposal, which is what's, I presume, is part of this application.
That's correct, yes.
And that as I understand, that the burning of material is not acceptable to the GVRD or Metro Vancouver, and not really necessarily by the provincial government either. Certainly not here, because I understand that J&E is being stopped from burning. But now the big issue becomes, if burning is no longer the acceptable method, then the only methods really that's left is grinding, right?
Well, I'm not so sure that's the case, Your Worship. We do know that Twin Island has applied to Metro Vancouver for what's called an air emissions permit application for open burning, and that application has not been completely processed, and
it's been returned, in fact, hasn't it?
Well, it's been returned for more information.
Right.
And so sections E and E1 now need to be completed by Twin Island, and the Metro Vancouver has recommended that Twin Island retain a consultant to assist them with that. And my understanding is that Twin Island is now in the process of doing that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Councillor Dunn's just asked for some advice. He's going to be declaring a conflict of interest regarding this issue, so we'll just hold that until he declares why he's declaring a conflict of interest.
Well, Twin Island is a major contractor for us, has for years, and in light of that, I would compromise probably the case by being present.
And if we're going to be continuing to talk about J&E intermittently, I'm going to have to excuse myself as well because of perceived conflict of interest.
I would suggest then the focus of the discussion be with the Twin Island application.
Or excuse myself.
Yes.
I would have to excuse myself at the same.
So I would ask you both to move away from the table, please. Thank you. As our solicitor indicated, actually, I would have been for conflict of interest. You could say unless there's going to be further discussion regarding the application.
Well, I think it's going to become part and parcel, I think, of.
Okay, then I would ask.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't feel bad about it.
Well,
excuse me. I think this particular application is talking about the Twin Island rezoning, and
right.
we're moving towards consideration of first reading, some referrals, the issues to do with air control and grinding or composting, all the proposed uses, they're all under discussion. They'll be reviewed, there'll be information provided back that makes a more fulsome discussion. I don't believe the Eddie Miller discussion has any part in this one right at the moment, so I would encourage Councillor Stone to stay, and that the focus of the conversation be the Twin Island application at the moment. As it is here, we're looking at just the first reading.
But I think we have to be clear that yes, it's the Twin Island application that we're facing, but I am concerned about. I am concerned, and I think other people will probably become concerned, because waste management is an important issue, which again wasn't on the agenda, but it's an important issue because we need to deal with it by December 31st of this year.
Yeah.
So I think there are going to be references to J&E throughout the piece.
Can I speak to that, Your Worship?
Yep.
We do have a separate application from J&E to rezone their property for uses that are similar to what is being considered here, and that will be advanced to council shortly, and that would be an appropriate opportunity to have the discussion around the J&E application at that point in time. But at the moment, the application in front of us is from Twin Island, and that's what the staff report is about, not about the J&E application.
Well, you're going to hear references, but it's up to you.
I will excuse myself if things become material.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Where was I?
Can I ask some questions so you can think about?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. So I guess it's all to do with burning and this development agreement that's suggested on page 17. It's not really a development, so I'm wondering if it's more of a good neighbor policy and operations agreement. And I would want to see that come back with the, if we go ahead with the first reading, I would want to move an amendment to the recommendation that we see a draft on the quote development, good neighbor, whatever we're going to call it, agreement prior to going further. I'd also want to see a date for when we're going to have the report come back. And I'd also like to add air quality and solid waste departments of Metro Vancouver to the list. And I'd also like to add the Sea to Sky air quality people to the list.
To the referral list.
To the referral list. And I'm not sure about the Provincial Ministry of Environment. I just assume we should add them as well. So that's sort of my process questions. And then I get into what isn't really answered well. The whole issue of what's going to be burned. Is it going to be the absolute last resort? Like all the branches are going to be chipped and the stumps are going to be broken apart as much as they can and ground. I do remember the discussion we had, and Mount Brushmore, as we called it, down on the golf course. And it did look like a mountain. That burn was done with forced air and a pit and a lot of criteria on the burn, and it was quite tame in relation to smoke. Having gone to look at it, there was only a small poof every time something was added, but I don't see anything in this rezoning. We're talking about controlled burning, which isn't a defined term anywhere. Mm-hmm. So we need to me, the burn should be last resort, only done maybe once or twice a year in the heaviest rain seasons. There's, I think, concern of, you know, can the fire truck get in there? There's reference in the fire chief's report to a 2,000 gallon or liter storage tank. Where's the apparatus to get the water out of that, to put on the fire? Could it get out of control? Northwest winds blowing, or Squamish outflows blowing down the sound. Offshore breezes in the summertime add greatly to feeding any potential of a fire. And then the other issue is noise. Will there be hours of operation set out in this agreement so that it doesn't run 5 days a week, 7 hours a day? Or checking noise from the existing crusher site, which neighbors to the site have told me they can hear. And then I certainly think we need to go ahead with the green waste site. I know as a municipality we've been looking at that area for green waste for a long time, so I don't have a problem with the whole concept. It's more the devil's in the details, as the saying goes. So, and then the other question, I guess, is the burning, how would it be done? I mean, would we require that it be a forced air, that kind of thing? I had one more question, which I can't remember. And have any conversations happen with Metro air quality and waste management people to see if they're even receptive to any more burning on the island.
All right, well, let me respond in part. I think some of your questions are addressed in the fire chief's report. The fire chief is here to respond more specifically to that if you care to address specific questions to him.
And I remember that.
And I did attempt to contact Metro last Friday, but wasn't able to get through to them. We will renew those efforts again.
So the last question is, I have some recollection of something somewhere, as had Peter Frinton, who had previously been Metro on the Sea to Sky Air Quality, that there's something somewhere that prevents trucking of debris from one site to another for burning, and I don't know whether that's in the Fire Act or what, and how this doesn't seem to address that. So how do we deal with that? And I can't find it, but I've got a recollection that it was there, and I think it came because it was raised in the Mount Rushmore issues that it had to be burned on site rather than trucked off site.
From what I understand, that there isn't a bylaw in place that allows trucking of debris from one site to another.
There is not.
There is not.
So everything that's been happening so far on Island has not been meeting bylaws. And then I guess the last question has to do with, the bylaw says controlled burning or grinding. What happens to what's left from the grinding? Is it going to go to be composted or trucked off? Or, you know, it talks about disposing of land clearing debris via controlled burning or grinding, but then you end up with a pile from the grinding and it doesn't sort of say the next step. And I guess the last is sort of, this is contrary to our traditional process where we would have a committee of the whole to discuss the proposed bylaws and then direct staff to come back with the bylaw for first reading. So I'm not sure whether it's ready for first reading or not, but I totally recognize the application's been sitting around for a year and we should be dealing with it.
I agree with you that it should be a committee of the whole. We should be discussing that before it comes to council for first reading.
We could move into committee of the whole now, which might enable the public to ask some questions if they've got any too.
Shouldn't we give the public warning? There may be people who want to speak to that.
Well, the agenda's been published and it was out there.
That's fine.
But not as a public meeting per se.
Well, council's a public meeting, so.
No.
The mayor has.
You know what I'm talking about, that,
yeah.
That people can't speak during council meetings.
But if we move to a committee of the whole now, if there are people here who would like to speak, we could allow them to speak.
Yeah, I don't think we've given adequate warning to the public that they will be allowed to speak to it at a committee of the whole. Crow, did you want to say something?
I mean, there's questions being asked here, but I think there are people in the audience that might be able to answer, and I would.
I certainly think the fire chief can answer.
And I would recommend moving to a committee of the whole. We can move in, we can move out.
What's the wish of, Brent?
Sorry for me. I mean, part of the emphasis here was in respecting to crowded agendas, moving over time, was the concept that at this stage, because there's a number of referrals and there's the requirement to report back those referrals, and any rezoning involves public hearing as well, there's ample opportunity to have this issue really well discussed. The notion here of getting it to first reading with the referrals was the intent was to get it on the table, share some thoughts, and then try to, I guess, move faster. Step. It's a small step that there's at least 3 or 4 other touches of the same process as with the other application. So it was just the notion was to allow it to get out here and move it one step forward and take it from there.
Can we ask the fire chief to address some of the points that have been raised, like what's controlled burning and some of those things?